There are moments in life when the body doesn't give you time to think. A cut that won't stop bleeding. A cough that keeps getting worse. A weakness you can't explain. Today, most people reach for medicine without thinking twice. But there was a time when that option didn't exist. And what's surprising is not only did people survive, many of them knew exactly what to use. Not from a pharmacy, but from the ground beneath them. Plants that could calm the body, support healing, and sometimes make the difference between getting worse or getting better. The strange part is, these plants haven't disappeared. They're still here, quietly growing in places most people ignore. Stay with me, because plant number 17 is now being studied for something modern medicine still struggles to deal with. Plant number 20 was used for pain long before aspirin ever existed. And one plant on this list was trusted when the body had almost nothing left to give. If even one of these opens your eyes, subscribe and stay with this channel, because this is the kind of knowledge most people never think to learn until they need it. Plant number 1, chicory root, when the body felt off and nothing seemed clear. There are times when the body doesn't feel sick, but it doesn't feel right either. Digestion slows, energy drops, and everything begins to feel heavy without a clear reason. In earlier times, people didn't ignore that feeling because they understood it could lead to something worse. That's when they turned to chicory root. They would dig the root from the soil, dry it, and prepare it into a bitter drink. That bitterness wasn't accidental, it was the reason it worked. It stimulated digestion, supported the liver, and helped the body process what it had been struggling to handle. Over time, the body would begin to feel lighter and more balanced. Today we understand that chicory supports gut health, but back then, people trusted what they could feel. When medicine wasn't available, this plant became a quiet way to bring the body back into order before things got worse. But not every problem was about imbalance, because sometimes the body wasn't slow, it was irritated and needed something very different. Plant number 2, marshmallow root. When the body needed protection, not force. There are moments when the body doesn't need to be pushed, it needs to be protected. A dry throat that won't settle, a stomach that feels inflamed, or irritation that doesn't go away no matter what you do. In those situations, people turned to marshmallow root. Not the sweet version we know today, but the plant itself. They would soak the root slowly in water, creating a thick, soothing liquid. When used, it coated the throat, calmed irritation, and reduced discomfort in a way that felt immediate but gentle. Instead of forcing the body to change, it gave it space to recover. What they were using, without naming it, was a natural compound that forms a protective layer over inflamed tissue. That meant the body could heal without constant irritation making things worse. When medicine didn't exist, this kind of support was powerful. Because sometimes survival didn't come from something strong, it came from something that allowed the body to recover safely. And this is where it starts to get more interesting, because the next plants weren't just gentle, they were used when the situation became more serious. Plant number 3, wood betony, when the head wouldn't quiet down. There are moments when the problem isn't physical pain you can point to, but something deeper. A constant pressure in the head, tension that won't release, a restless feeling that keeps the body from settling. In earlier times, people didn't ignore this state because they understood how quickly it could drain the body. That's when they turned to wood betony. It was considered a plant for the head and nervous system, something that could bring calm when everything felt overstimulated. People would dry the leaves and prepare them as a tea, taken slowly, allowing the body to settle instead of forcing it to stop. Over time, the tension would ease, the mind would feel clearer, and the body would begin to return to a more balanced state. It wasn't about knocking the system out, it was about guiding it back. When medicine wasn't available, this kind of quiet support was often the difference between continuing forward or breaking down completely. But not every problem came from the mind. Sometimes the issue was moving through the body itself, slowly building where you couldn't see it. Plant number 4, cleavers, when the body needed to clear what it couldn't release. There are times when the body feels heavy in a different way, not from food, not from fatigue, but from something building beneath the surface. swelling, sluggish movement, a sense that the system isn't clearing what it should. In those moments, people turned to cleavers, a simple plant, often overlooked, but known for supporting the body's natural cleansing pathways. They would prepare it as a fresh infusion or tea, allowing it to work gradually rather than aggressively. And over time, the body would begin to shift. Fluid would move more freely, the sense of heaviness would reduce, and the system would feel less burdened. It didn't force the body, it supported it. When medicine didn't exist, helping the body clear itself was one of the most important strategies people had, and plants like cleavers became part of that process. But then there were situations where things became more immediate, when breathing itself didn't feel normal. Plant number 5, ground ivy, when the head felt blocked and breathing changed. There's a specific kind of discomfort that makes everything harder. Pressure in the head, blocked sinuses, difficulty breathing clearly. It's not always severe, but it's enough to affect everything you do. In those moments, people turned to ground ivy, a low-growing plant that many ignored, but those who knew it understood its value. They would prepare it as a tea or infusion, using it to support the head and respiratory pathways. Slowly, the pressure would begin to ease. Breathing would feel clearer. The heaviness in the head would reduce. It wasn't instant, but it worked. When medicine wasn't available, even small improvements like this could change how the body functioned day to day. And ground ivy became one of those quiet solutions people relied on, without needing to explain why. But this is where things start to change, because the next plant wasn't gentle, it was powerful, and people treated it with caution. Plant number 6, lobelia, when the body needed a strong response. There are situations where mild solutions aren't enough. The body feels tight, breathing becomes restricted, and something needs to shift quickly. That's where lobelia came in. It was known as a powerful plant, one that could affect the body more directly than most. People used it carefully, often in very small amounts, to support respiratory function and help the body respond when breathing felt restricted. It wasn't something used casually. It required knowledge, awareness, and respect. But when used correctly, it could help the body open up and respond more effectively. In a time without modern intervention, plants like lobelia represented something important, not comfort, but action. And sometimes that's exactly what was needed. And this is where it becomes even more interesting, because the next plants weren't just used for the body, they affected how people felt, thought, and endured. Plant number 7, skullcap, when the mind wouldn't slow down. There are moments when the body is tired, but the mind refuses to rest. Thoughts keep moving, tension builds quietly, and even when nothing is happening, the system feels on edge. In earlier times, people didn't separate mental strain from physical health, they understood the two were connected. That's when they turned into a skullcap, a plant known for supporting the nervous system when it felt overstimulated. They would prepare it as a tea and take it slowly, allowing the body to ease instead of forcing it to shut down. Over time, the tension would soften, the mind would feel less reactive, and the body could finally begin to settle. It wasn't a sedative in the way modern solutions work. It was something gentler, something that helped restore balance instead of overriding it. And in a world without quick fixes, that kind of support mattered more than anything. But not every problem came from tension. Sometimes the issue was more physical, more specific, and harder to ignore. Plant number 8, eyebright, when vision became unclear. There are times when something as simple as your vision can start to feel off. Irritation, strain, discomfort in the eyes that doesn't seem to go away. It may not stop you completely, but it changes how you experience everything. That's where eyebright came in, a small plant, easy to overlook, but known for its connection to eye and sinus health. People would prepare it as a gentle infusion, sometimes using it externally, sometimes internally, depending on the need. And slowly, the irritation would begin to calm. The eyes would feel clearer, less strained, more stable. It wasn't dramatic, but it was noticeable. In a time without specialized treatments, even small improvements like this made a real difference in daily life. and plants like eyebright became part of that quiet support system people relied on. But then there were situations where the body needed more than relief. It needed control. Plant number 9. Shepherd's purse, when bleeding had to stop. There are moments when something simple becomes urgent. A cut, an injury, and suddenly the body is losing more than it should. In those situations, time matters. That's where the shepherd's purse became important. People recognized it as a plant that could help the body respond when bleeding needed to slow down. They would crush the plant or prepare it in simple forms and apply or use it depending on the situation. And what made it different was how quickly it could support the body's natural clotting response. It didn't replace the body's process, it helped it work more effectively. When medicine wasn't available, knowing a plant like this could make the difference between control and loss. And that knowledge was passed carefully from one generation to the next. But not every kind of discomfort was visible. Some of it stayed hidden, building slowly over time. Plant number 10, goldenrod, when the body felt inflamed from within. There are conditions that don't show clearly on the outside, discomfort that builds quietly, inflammation that affects how the body functions without an obvious cause. In those moments, people turn to goldenrod. A plant often misunderstood, but traditionally used to support the body when inflammation and internal discomfort were present. They would prepare it as a tea, allowing it to work gradually rather than forcing a reaction. Over time, the body would begin to feel less irritated, more stable, more balanced. It wasn't immediate, but it was steady. And that's what made it valuable. When medicine wasn't available, consistency mattered more than speed. And plants like goldenrod provided that steady support the body needed to recover over time. And now, this is where things begin to shift even further. Because the next plants weren't just supportive, they were used when the body needed real recovery. Plant number 11, horsetail, when the body needed to rebuild. There are times when the body doesn't just need relief, it needs rebuilding. Weak nails, fragile hair, slow recovery after strain or injury. In earlier times, people turned to horsetail, a plant that looks simple but carries something powerful inside it. It's naturally rich in silica, a compound that supports the body's structural strength. People would prepare it as a tea or infusion and use it consistently, not expecting instant results, but steady improvement. Over time, the body would begin to feel stronger, more stable, more resilient. It wasn't about quick healing, it was about rebuilding what had been worn down. And in a world without supplements, that kind of support was rare. But sometimes, the body didn't need rebuilding, it needed relief from something deeper inside. Plant number 12, dandelion root, when the system needed a reset. Most people see dandelion as just a weed, but that's exactly why it was so valuable. It was everywhere, and people knew how to use it. When digestion slowed, when the body felt heavy or overloaded, they turned to the root. It would be dug up, dried, and prepared into a bitter drink that helped stimulate the liver and digestive system. That bitterness triggered a response in the body, helping it process, break down, and move things more efficiently. Over time, people noticed their energy improve, and their system felt lighter. It wasn't dramatic, but it worked. And when medicine wasn't available, something simple and reliable like this made a real difference. And then there were situations where the problem showed up on the surface and needed attention immediately. Plant number 13, chickweed, when the skin became irritated. Skin problems can start small, but quickly become uncomfortable. Irritation, redness, itching, something that doesn't seem serious, but doesn't go away either. That's where chickweed came in. A soft, low-growing plant that people used when the skin needed calming, not aggression. They would crush it fresh or prepare it into a simple paste and apply it directly to the affected area. And slowly, the irritation would begin to ease. The skin would feel cooler, less reactive, more stable. It wasn't harsh, it wasn't strong, it was gentle. But that's exactly what made it effective. When medicine didn't exist, sometimes the best solution wasn't force. It was something that worked with the body, not against it. But now, this is where things start to get more intense. because the next plants weren't just calming or supportive, they were used when pain became harder to ignore. Plant number 14, wild lettuce, when pain needed to be calmed. There are moments when the body is in pain, and it doesn't let you ignore it. Not sharp enough to stop everything, but constant enough to wear you down. In earlier times, people turned to wild lettuce, a plant known for its ability to calm discomfort and help the body relax without completely shutting it down. They would prepare it carefully, often as a tea or extract, using it in small amounts. Over time, the body would begin to feel less tense, less reactive, more at ease. It didn't remove the problem instantly, but it made it manageable. And in a world without modern pain relief, that kind of quiet support was incredibly valuable. But sometimes, calming the body wasn't enough. Sometimes the problem was deeper and harder to ignore. Plant number 15, burdock root, when the body needed to clean from within. There are conditions that don't come from one clear cause. Skin issues, fatigue, a feeling that something inside the body isn't right. In those moments, people didn't look for something fast, they looked for something that worked over time. That's where burdock root came in. They would prepare it as a tea or decoction, using it consistently to support the body's natural cleansing processes. Slowly, the system would begin to shift. Skin would improve, energy would stabilize, and the body would feel less burdened. It wasn't a quick fix, but it addressed the root of the problem. And when medicine didn't exist, that approach was often more effective than anything immediate. And this is where things start to change again, because the next plant wasn't just supportive, it was used when the body needed protection. Plant number 16, slippery elm, when the body was raw and needed protection. There are moments when the body feels exposed, a sore throat that burns, a stomach that reacts to everything, tissues that feel irritated and sensitive. In those situations, people turned to slippery elm. They would mix the inner bark with water, creating a thick, smooth substance that coated the throat and digestive system. Instead of forcing the body to respond, it created a protective layer. This allowed the irritated areas to calm down and begin healing without constant stress. It was simple, but powerful. When medicine wasn't available, protecting the body was just as important as treating it, and slippery elm did exactly that. But then, there were situations where the body wasn't just irritated, it was under real pressure. Plant number 17, Osha root, when breathing became a real concern. There are moments when breathing doesn't feel normal, and that changes everything. Tightness in the chest, difficulty taking a full breath, a feeling that something isn't working the way it should. In those situations, people turn to Osha root, a plant found in high mountain regions known for its strong effect on the respiratory system. They would chew the root or prepare it carefully, using it to support the lungs and help the body respond when breathing became difficult. It wasn't mild, it was powerful, and that's why it was respected. Today, this plant is being studied for its antimicrobial and respiratory support properties, which explains why it was trusted for so long. When medicine didn't exist, plants like this weren't optional, they were essential, and knowing when and how to use them could make all the difference. And now, we reach the final part of this list, because the last 3 plants weren't just helpful, they were some of the most powerful people relied on. Plant number 18, devil's claw, when movement became painful. There are moments when the body doesn't stop, but every movement reminds you something isn't right. Joint pain, stiffness, discomfort that builds over time and slowly limits what you can do. In those situations, people turn to the devil's claw, a plant with a strong name and an even stronger purpose. They would prepare the root and use it consistently, not expecting instant relief, but gradual change. Over time, the body would begin to feel less restricted, less inflamed, more capable of movement again. It didn't remove the cause, but it made life manageable. And when medicine didn't exist, being able to move without constant discomfort was something people valued more than anything. But not every problem was about movement. Sometimes the issue was deeper, inside the body itself. Plant number 19, Milk thistle, when the body needed protection from within. There are times when the body feels overloaded, not from one clear issue, but from everything building up over time. Low energy, poor digestion, a sense that something inside isn't working properly. That's when people turn to milk thistle, a plant known for supporting one of the most important organs in the body, the liver. They would use the seeds in simple preparations, helping the body process and protect itself from internal stress. Slowly, the system would begin to stabilize. Energy would return, digestion would improve, and the body would feel less burdened. It wasn't fast, but it was effective. And when medicine wasn't available, supporting the body from within was often the only real solution. And now, the final plant. The one that brings everything together. Plant number 20. White willow bark, the original pain relief. Long before modern medicine created solutions for pain, people had already found one. White willow bark. A simple tree, growing quietly, but carrying something powerful inside it. People would strip the bark, prepare it carefully, and use it to reduce pain and fever. What they didn't know at the time was that this plant contains the same foundational compound that modern aspirin is based on. But here's what makes it different. In its natural form, it works with the body more gently, without the harsh effects that often come with synthetic versions. It wasn't just a remedy, it was a foundation, a reminder that some of the solutions we rely on today didn't start in a lab. They started in nature. And they were working long before we understood why. Long before medicine became something you buy, it was something people understood, and most of that knowledge is still here, just forgotten. If even one of these plants surprised you, let me know in the comments. I read them, and I'm curious what stood out to you. If you found this valuable, take a second to like the video. It helps more people discover this kind of knowledge. And if you want more videos like this, subscribe and stay connected. Because this isn't information most people go looking for. But when they need it, it matters. And if someone comes to mind while watching this, share it with them. You never know who might actually need it one day.